And that gosh darn that tape tricked me. I'm sorry. I have to
The
bring this
tape?
up. Yeah,
And we
I
thought and
thought
we
that was
thought they
like
were.
I thought they saw how like Superman and they like clogged me. That was like, oh crap, I'm stuck here for a while now.
Nah, it was just yeah, it was zombie. Oh, and then I thought it was so silly when you're trying to break out and you see that tool chest with the cute little drawings on it that has the painter's knife,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
suddenly she can't, for whatever reason, scale up into a closet by herself and needs the chair. And I'm just thinking, Clem, you climbed an entire like tower and
Yeah.
stuff in previous seasons. You can't just jump in.
Yeah.
You really will. So
Well, you know that box is really high. I'm just saying.
it just seemed like anyway. So then Marlon, I apologized immediately once I finally once my brain caught up with my freaking mouse clicking hand and think to myself, wait, these people are just as scared as me. I should. So I just started apologizing profusely to both of them, and they seemed okay with it, and they were going to take us to find AJ.
What made
No.
you go ahead?
I was gonna say no. Went kind of like full Rick Grimes. I was like, I don't know you and I don't trust you. Like drop the arrow. I don't want to hurt you. I was like, oh shoot, I gotta think this through. You know, he's got a bow and arrow. I got a little
You're
midget.
not gonna. Yeah.
I got a little midget knife. I think I need to think this through rationally. So I dropped my knife and he's like, all right, I'm not gonna hurt you. Gun over here, but I'm like, I'm screwed.
Yeah, what were you saying?
Lucky Jack, you said that you trusted Marlon, and that sounded like you trusted him pretty quickly. What made you trust him?
The fact that I immediately felt I immediately felt bad, especially like realizing I'm doing this to a kid who's younger than me, who's got a freaking I okay, just to get this out there, 10 has like a burn mark on the side of his head,
Yeah.
and it's never brought up or
Yeah.
acknowledged in conversation. Not that it has to, but I was curious about that. I immediately thought to myself, crap, these people have AJ. Then this was also the moment where I'm thinking, this was feeling very, again, season 1-y to me, like this could be the new group. And I don't think I want to immediately make myself seem like this crazy, hostile person at all times. I wanted it to seem like a genuine, I was scared, so I acted out. Here, this is the real me. I'm more calm, more resolved than this.
Did you think it was easier to trust this group because they were younger and mostly kids and closer to Clementine's age, or you don't think that would have mattered?
I felt it was easier to trust them because they weren't immediately accusing me of being bitten by a walker and holding me up in a shed where I had to do surgery by myself. That was a very strong argument I had for why I like these people more than season 2's group initially.
Let me rephrase the question, and this actually is a question to all three of you. If you were in the Walking Dead universe and you found a group of these kids or young adults, young teens or preteens, versus another group that was mostly adults, do you feel like you would be more inclined to trust the kids over the adults, or would you trust them equally, or what?
I think I would probably it may feel like a cop out, but I would say I would probably just trust them both equally, just because.
Really? Okay.
I think it was either in season 2 or season 1, but someone made this remark of now that we're in the world that we're in right now, there's not the idea of someone being like a kid or like a young adult doesn't really exist. It's all, like you said, it's like we've almost gone back in time where the idea is like, okay, you're of age now, you are instantly an adult. Like for us, modern age, we treat, say the adult age and stuff for like big major decisions like this, survival, being an adult, being the man of the house, being that stuff, it like usually is like 18, 21 or so on. And now Clementine the age of like 15 and the other people the age of 17, suddenly they just like the responsibilities and the environment has changed so much that I can't in tense situations like this, in terms of like that, I can't view the young adult and the adult differently in terms of trust like that.
You say that, and yet, if I remember what you just said earlier, you were saying that you felt really bad for disarming 10, because you also saw like the scar on his face. Had 10 actually been, a 20-something-year-old or a late 20-something-year-old with also like a scar on his face, would you have felt just as guilty, equally as guilty?
That's actually a good point. I probably would not feel as guilty I would
with
still
an
feel
adult.
I would still feel apologetic because
Mhm.
I would see myself as like I jumped him and I was like being aggressive, but I would not. I probably wouldn't feel as guilty because I would think to myself they should expect this. They should know better not to,
Mhm.
or they should they not to know not that they should know better than to draw a knife, but they should know better that someone would react this way to them drawing a
Mhm.
knife on them, which led me to believe I don't think Ten's been in a situation like that often.
Mark, how about you? Would you tend to trust kids more, or would you trust them equally as adults in this situation?
One's different, and every group is different. And kids can be really, really cruel. And this was brought up several times, but this could easily turn to like a Lord of the Flies situation, you know, and where it's like fight for control, and everyone like half the kids go crazy, half the kids are trying to maintain order. So it all depends.
How about you, Carson?
It's a little different for me, but I get what Mark is saying, and I definitely get what Logan's saying. But for me, I'm shaking my head. Logan's thinking like, "Well, he's a kid, so I gotta be a little easy." And I'm like, I don't know. In a zombie apocalypse, I'm gonna treat everyone equally because, you know, everything's like that. But like as Mark was saying, it's always different with each group. When you go into a different group, you gotta worry about. You gotta be cautious to everyone. You gotta know who's good, like who's morally good, and who's like who's willing to like go like past the good zone, who's willing to who do you not trust, who seems very aggressive and assertive. You gotta learn all these things. And for me, I would have been cautious, but overall from the group, I think I would have been equal. I would have been what you were saying. I would have like treated the kids equal as adults, but except for 10, because 10 seemed like he was still like in that child state where he's like young kid, young adult mixed together is what I'm trying to say. Because he shows like kid qualities, but he shows like he has that adult personality.
When it comes to trust, I honestly don't know because, well, these kids in particular, they've grown up in this environment, so they know. And adults tend to be, I don't know. I really don't know. I think I would trust equally based on like their personalities and stuff. I wouldn't really judge by age.
I see. Do you think that because these kids are of this new generation, do you think that necessarily puts them at an advantage over adults, or not necessarily, or what?
Oh, for sure. I think so, yeah, because kids learn so much faster than adults and they adapt so much faster than adults. So now it's like this is their entire life and they've grown up like this. So of course they know more and they would do better, in my opinion.
I think the parental side of me tends to make me more biased towards trusting kids more. And I know that, and I'm not saying that's a good idea, because I think ultimately, I think Chuck was the name of the homeless guy that we befriend in season 1 when he gave that speech about you're not an adult, you're not a kid, you're not a boy, you're not a girl, you're just living, or you're either living or you're dead. You know, he basically was trying to preach that you kind of have to treat everybody equally and everyone's a threat, no matter who you are. And I will logically, intellectually know that, but I feel like if you were to throw me into the situation, if a group of younger kids were to meet me and they wanted to take advantage of me in that way, I would be more susceptible to that, I think.
Right. Yeah.
But no, I think we all have to have that Chuck philosophy, because if you look at everyone as like Hark is a little biased as like you can trust kids more. You don't know. Kids can be a little conniving, manipulative, and evil sometimes, and that was what drove me. Like, you know, I gotta treat everyone equal as an adult. If this was like pre-apocalyptic, I would have agreed with that. Post-apocalyptic, no, these kids are gonna mature super fast. They're gonna be much more adaptable, and they're gonna be ready to know how to do this kind of stuff.
I personally thought throughout this episode they did a great job of introducing the sheer number of characters that they did. Now, granted, I'm like Carson, where I don't necessarily remember the names of all of them, but they gave us time to have the option of sitting down and meet each one, and you start to get a little bit of a taste of each of the kids' personalities, because they're all different.
Yeah.
And they all have little quirks about each and every one of them. And one of the things that the people on the live stream said in the chats is that the characters, they're all likable. You might favor some more than others, but there wasn't necessarily a character that you just outright really despised.
No, there's no like one bad seed.
There was no major, nothing like an obvious bad seed. And so I thought that was really cool, because they could have done it worse, I guess is what I'm saying, handled it worse, introducing this sheer number of new characters and not having it work as well as it did, in my opinion. Unless any of you disagree with that.
No, I think they did for the writing staff, they did actually a pretty remarkable job of having such a variety, not just of making sure that not one of them was too bad, but they also did a good job just having a diverse personality group. Even. Just everyone across that. Everyone, no two people were the same, and each had their own you could tell each and every one of them had their own approach to situations.
And I was actually going to ask you, Hark. My question would have been, as the bigger RPG fan, do you think that helps drive the story better, or it just great, now I got to learn everybody quick as possible?
It can if done properly, because I think that there is merit to having a tighter and more intimate cast with fewer characters, and then just really flesh out a strong story from them. But for a game like this, where it's divided up into different episodes and you have a little bit more freedom to possibly delve deeper into individual characters as the episodes progress, I think it can work. Because, I didn't know anything and everything about Katja in the first season, but there was time for me to get to know her a little bit throughout however many episodes she was actually in before she finally died. So I think in this situation it worked. It drove the story pretty well, because you're normally thrown into a community like Carver's community. I didn't meet every single person in Carver's community. I didn't meet every single person in the Last Frontier. Not the Last Frontier. I keep calling it the Last Frontier.
The New Frontier.
The New Frontier. So this is one of those really unique situations where you actually know everybody in the group. And it's kind of neat, because it's the difference between living in a big city versus living in a small rural village where all of the neighbors know each other. I think it's a totally different feel.
Okay.
Yeah. Mark, what did you think about these some of our first encounters with these new characters?
Yeah, I agree. They're all very, very likable, and I'm sure we're going to delve deeper into specific characters in a little bit. Impressions, I really, really like all of them, really.
So first, the whole children thing, I love it, because I love how we're moving on to the next generation in this universe, because we have this whole apocalypse situation. And they always show you in this kind of thing, they always show you how the people, how us, basically adults who are living in a normal world, would deal if something like that happened. But now they're showing us all these people who are 10 years at most when everything went down. So they've spent almost half of their lives in this situation, and everything they've had to learn has had to do with this horrible situation that happened. And Clementine being the biggest example, when the apocalypse started, Clementine was 9 or turned 9 a couple months after everything went down. It's almost more than half of her life has just been the apocalypse. So it's interesting how they're really hammering that in, and they're really touching on that subject. Let's leave the adults, let's move on to the next generation. Especially AJ, because he was born into this whole deal.
Which of the characters, Mark, resonated with you the most, or which of the characters did you like the most? And then which of the characters are you curious about learning more?
This is going to sound weird because, not to get ahead of myself, but a lot of the choices I made regard Violet, but I really, really like Lewis the most.
Really?
I really enjoy his character. Yeah. I
What
really,
was-
really enjoy his character.
What was it about Lewis that you liked?
I think we started singing "Oh My Darling Clementine." That got me. It was like, that's what sold me.
Yeah.
I can already see you don't like that, dude. Come on, Lucky Jack.
I'm not. I love music. That was just. My girlfriend knows, especially. I'm not a fan of like puns or direct jokes like that. So when that happened, I picked the response of "Don't stop that music right." Not to show that not to say that I hated music. Just I was just like, I felt like he was giving me a hard time. I was like, no, I'm not having none of that.
Well, I do. To be fair, I love that the game gave you the choice on how to respond to that, because you could either love it or hate it, or somewhere in between. I love that Clementine, your Clementine, could decide for herself how to react to that.
I'm also surprised it took him this long into the series to ever bring about that.
Yes, I agree with that too. Mark, was there a character other than Lewis that you are curious to learn more about?
Well, I think the most curious one would be the one associated with Lewis the most, which is Asim.
Asim.
Yes.
He looks nice.
Because he was the one writing the diary, and he's kind of secretive. So it's like, I would like to look at him.
Characters I liked the guy who was their chef. I forgot his name.
Yeah.
I forgot his name though.
I forgot his name too, but I know who you're talking about.
Omar,
Omar, thank you.
He seemed like a nice, like, genuine person. I appreciated that. One character I would like to learn more about. I'm so sorry. As someone who's lived with the condition for a long time, I feel like I have maybe some like ability to identify or recognize it, and so I don't know how else to, because I forgot his name. I genuinely forgot his name. I don't know how else to describe him as the kid who seemed to be a little socially disabled.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Willie. That would be Willie.
Willie, I think.
I'm curious to learn more about. First, is Willie? What was the name of the older guy who he was with? Who was like, later on you see him whittling a piece of wood. Like,
that would be Mitch. And
are they friends? Are they?
Well, it's assumed they're all friends.
Well, but I'm saying, but I didn't know if Willie and Mitch were brothers, because it definitely seemed like Willie and Mitch seemed to, the fact that he was sitting there and he seemed fine with it. Mitch definitely seems more tolerant of Willie. And again, Willie is the first person you're introduced to when he's staring at you bug-eyed. But he was just very. I can get that though. He was very curious. He was very like he's didn't know how to approach the situation.
It's a new person.
Yeah.
Well, according to Walking Dead Wikia, it says that Willie appears to be good friends with Mitch, so it's assumed that they're good friends.
Okay.
I want to make this clear. Who did I like more? I'm sorry, but this is where I side with you on this, Mark. But I loved Violet more.
You like Violet?
I relate to her more because, like, it's not that it's hard for me to talk. It's just sometimes, like, when in a group setting, it's just I'm a little antisocial. Like, yeah, okay, I just want to. Yeah, okay. Like when it's a large group. If it's a small group, I can easily talk with people. And I relate to that more. I was like, oh my God, this girl, she's like speaking my language. I know how this girl feels. But who was I more curious to learn about? It's actually Mitch, because we don't get to hear much about Mitch. And I was like, you know what? You shaping that weapon. You look like you're ready. You've been adapting to this world and everything.
It's about that now.
You've been adapting to this world and everything. Oh man, I want to learn more about you. I'm curious what your mindset is and everything. This is what draws me in about the guys, and I want to know more about him.
The one that immediately got me. Well, I'm a little biased because I watched the ending before I watched the episode. I know, sorry.
It's okay.
So, but when watching the ending, I think I really don't know who got my attention first. But when I watched the episode itself, I think the first one that really got my attention because of lighting choices was Marlon, when he shows up for the first time and he's like all shadows, and then he walks up and It's a very well done scene. It's not that I liked him because I watched the ending first, so I did not trust him when watching the episode itself. But if I had watched the episode without watching the ending first, I think I would have liked him. Not his hair though, but I would have had liked him a lot until the end.
What is it about Mitch that made you want to learn more about Mitch?
The little interaction that Clem has with him, like the talk that they have. I don't know if it's just me, but he really he only says a couple words. But he really shows signs of having some type of autism. So it's like, I want to know more.
But I'm sorry to throw this under the boat, but the one I never want to learn about, or who I just absolutely hated as a character, is Ruby. I'm sorry. I didn't like
Ruby.
I did not like Ruby.
Ruby, I have my own little opinion about, but we'll get to that later.
Okay.
But speaking of Ruby, we do get to meet her on our way to Lewis, where Marlon says AJ is with Lewis, and on our way to see Lewis.
Yeah.
Ruby comes out.
She gets bitten by AJ. And I felt bad because I chose, because I hate, my husband is a teacher, so I hate when parents are like, well, not my child. My child would never do that. So, because Colin would tell me that's what he deals with a lot of parents. Well, he behaves perfectly fine around me. Mm-hmm. So I felt horrible when I chose the choice. Oh, AJ would never do that. I was like, oh no,
that was me too, and I totally got that. However,
he wouldn't do that.
From that perspective, I will defend and argue that was a Fallout 4 kind of problem with me, where the text said one thing, and I thought, oh, I'll select that. Says something much more intense than I was ever anticipating.
Right.
Because I saw it as reading verbatim. I would say that doesn't sound like AJ. Is he okay?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Not immediately take a strong. He would never do that. It's like
right, exactly.
I was thought no. Hold up. Your initial thought, Clementine, was what I wanted to say, which was that
it doesn't sound like him, but I can kind of understand.
Right. It means I'm still at least open to the idea, not outright denial.
Right. Not like outright defend. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But
no, yeah. I went with Logan immediately. He's like, I didn't side with hey, my child would never do that. I just I don't know.
Stepping away from
that. But AJ is your child, Carson.
Okay, yeah, he's my child.
But he would never do that.
Yeah. What did you pick for that?
I think it was the option where it's like, I'm sorry, it's just he might have overreacted or something like that. It's like I didn't expect it. It's like, I'm sorry, I just didn't think he would do that or something like that, because I never expect. We don't know much on AJ, what he's capable of doing, and that's what got to me. Like, oh, wait a minute, what could AJ be possibly capable of doing as a child? So if someone says like he bit me, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, he didn't mean to do that, I apologize. I'm like, I'm trying to be the adult in this case.
More on that later. Mark, what did you pick for that situation?
Oh, I apologize to Ruby.
Okay.
Oh, that's so nice.
I did the same.
That's
and
nice.
I assume she took that a little bit more positively than the outright calling her a liar thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, I immediately believed her, and because it really sounded something like AJ would do, like the small introduction that we got.
Yeah, my son would do that.
Complete,
he
does
definitely do it.
If you have kids, Alex, bring them to Colin's school. Because Colin will love because Colin would love having you on his side. Oh yeah, my kid would totally do that.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. So I believed her. It was like even though I didn't play the game, my first reaction would have been immediately to apologize.
Yeah, this is another one of those really interesting situations where it's just a product of AJ being born into this place where he doesn't get to learn about a lot of socially acceptable things, because normally it's just him and Clementine traveling around. I don't think he's had play dates. Because my brother, when he was really young, my brother was a biter. Like, if you got him angry, he would bite you. And my parents had to teach him not to do that, but it's easier to teach him not to do that when you actually get to watch him interact with other kids, of which I don't think AJ has had much experience. So I don't blame Clementine to have not mentioned that. By the way, you probably don't want to bite people, because again, he's probably hasn't had very many play dates where that situation would have been brought up. And this morning, we're gonna get to a scene like this later, but this morning I just came back from brunch, and my friend has 2 little girls, and one of the little girls was getting upset because they had some friends over, and the friend was using one of her toys, and she got upset because she was using the toys too long, ignoring the fact that normally when the friend's not there, she can play with the toy as long as she wants.
Right.
But you know, my friend who was the mom was trying to explain to her, you know, you should share your things, because sharing is actually something. My friend said after the fact, sharing is something that kids don't innately get. You're not born from the womb naturally wanting to share things. That has to be taught. Normally it's school, of which AJ never went to school to be taught how to share. So that gets touched on later on.
And especially with that mentality, especially knowing that besides Clementine, the only other that I can think of besides whatever we learned about whatever happened at that farmhouse, wherever that AJ was, the only other main character who had a lot of exposure to AJ at that development at that age was David in season 3. When he was looking after him during the time when Clementine was separated. So I mean, I'm just saying, like, in terms of like being impressionable, who knows what he may have picked up from David.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So yeah, so then we go in, and I'm thinking to myself, crap, AJ, in this day and age, why did you have to bite her? You could have slapped her, you could have pushed her. Why was the one thing you had to do the other thing that the most like feared thing in the world right now also does?
Is being bitten. That's true. That is a pretty low blow, I do admit. And
not a good way to gain brownie points around here.
Make friends and influence people, yes.
Yeah. But we meet Lewis, who immediately reminded me of multiple characters I've seen in the past. Right off the top of my head, reminded me of Lucio from Overwatch, but that's just because I was playing it like a couple weeks ago.
I was actually surprised that I thought I would like Lewis more than I ended up liking him. Because when I first met him, I thought he would end up being possibly one of my favorite characters. And then as the episode progressed, he became less and less of my favorite character. My favorite character actually ended up being Asim. Ooh. Just because he seemed like the intellectual type, wanting to, you know, thinking about storing things in history. So there was really a lot about that character that I liked and resonated with me a lot. If I was going to ship Clementine with anyone, I actually would ship Clementine with Asim at the moment now.
Okay.
But the person that I think I would love to learn more about would probably be Ten. I also really like Ten a lot. So.
Yeah, I'm liking him too. At first, I was a little worried. I didn't know how much. Actually, now I think about it, of all the characters, I'm really at this point more conscientious of out of all of them. I'm more conscientious of what Ten thinks of me over everyone else right now. Of course, next to AJ, but yeah, you get that point.
I did not. Well, let me put it like this. I like Lewis when I may have misheard and when you hear my list, but I thought he pronounced his name like Luis, and I'm like, oh, okay, but it's set as Lewis, but okay. I liked him as a guy, like as a buddy, like okay, he seems like a cool guy to like, but and later on, I'm like, oh my god, I hope you're the first to die in this episode.
Oh no.
Oh, interesting.
I was like, oh god, I don't like this guy as a character. Whenever you are funny, sweet, caring, and you have a good personality, you're usually the first on the chopping block.
I will say for you, Carson, that the opposite happened with me with Violet. I initially met Violet. I thought I might not like her as much, but as the episode progressed, I liked her more and more.
Thank you.
So
okay.
Yes, I couldn't like Lewis. I mean, okay, you seem like a cool guy and everything. I mean, you're obviously trying to flirt with my Clementine. Like, have you ever had a boyfriend? We'll get to that scene later.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I can't like you. I mean, you're sweet and all, but you're just not for me. And I just want you to die is all I want.
I feel like Violet looks a lot like Max from not Stranger Things. Max from Life is Strange. Is that kind of why you like her so much, Carson?
Hawk, why are you doing this? Why are you?
I feel like
Hey, we're just at the
I know that you were a big fan of Max, so
she will always have a place in my heart.
I know.
So,
I know.
And to be fair, no, like I mentioned earlier, it's just Max has this personality that it's not that she's antisocial. We're gonna have to do Life is Strange real quick. She has this kind of personality where she's fun to be around, even though she's a little antisocial, but she's just really cool and really like a down-to-earth person. Violet's just intentionally sometimes antisocial, which I can relate to because she's either seen some tough things or she's just very, and this is what it is, like a loner type of kind of character. And I'm like, that's me.
I don't see you as an antisocial person, Carson.
I just saw her as tough-skinned.
That's one of the things too. It's just like she's going through some times. Like she was very like when we'll get to that scene again. She was very close friends with somebody, and it hurt her so much that it's like now she feels like she's the loner.
Mm-hmm. We get to the part where walkers are attacking, and then there's all these traps.
Oh yeah,
it does feel a lot like the Lost Boys. I feel like Hook. Wouldn't they have all those traps in Hook or something along those lines?
I bet they did. Hang on.
Something like that.
Yeah,
even though, and Marlon sort of reminds me of Rufio.
I can totally see that.
He's got the hair.
Which I didn't learn. I didn't random film trivia. I didn't know this. Rufio was played by the guy who later went on to voice Zuko in Avatar.
I did know that. Yeah,
that was cool.
And I think he's Filipino.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, which is kind of cool. Anyway, back to Walking Dead.
So yeah, Walking Dead.
I wanted to know what everyone thought about that whole scene right there because I did not like using the traps. Even though I took advantage of them, I was just more like Violet. Just walk up and just use the meat cleaver on their head.
It felt very Looney Tunes. I thought.
It felt Zombieland like.
Yeah, Zombieland.
Yes, Zombieland would have been. If it said rule number blah blah blah, I would have been like, oh.
I felt like Wile E. Coyote trying to catch the
Roadrunner.
The Roadrunner with these traps.
Yeah, what happens if you cut a trap and it just misses zombie? He's gonna go look like.
It just seemed like a lot of effort to kill one zombie.
Yeah,
a lot of effort to put those rocks up there.
Let's not even. Yeah, I love how no one even not you, but I'm saying I love how no one in that game even questioned how did we lift up a massive boulder suspended.
I don't.
Have you figured it out? Marlon's super strong.
I don't know.
That type of taking that. Also, honestly, if you think about it, really poor. Like I agree with you, Hart. Really poorly designed traps because. Like I tried to use a trap on more than one walker. I tried to get them all into one thing, but each trap only could take out one walker.
Yeah.
And the amount of time it looks like it would take to reset the trap, it just looked horribly.
They really need to improve the crowd control of those traps.
Tiger traps, even. I don't know.
Well, anyway. I don't know because when I cut one of the traps, it was like a giant lodged into it. And I was like,
we need more AOE's. We need more area of effect traps.
More draw.
Well, Mark, that's where you come in, and you got to go talk to them and see how this can work.
So yeah, little fight sequence, and we get to meet the characters a bit more. Violet, we get to see her.
Yes, and then there's the card game.
Oh wait, no. I was gonna say before that we also get
3 new characters, which is Asim, which is Mitch, and Brody.
And we also get to meet who, up until then, had been mysterious. I didn't know who she was. I thought it was another person. We also get to meet Rosie.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
somebody wanted to talk about Rosie.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the first thing I want to say is that dog brought back some cold memories, especially with Lucky Jack saying, "Hello, little guy. Are you gonna rip my face off and everything?"
Well, I was thinking that's the thing is and I'm actually was surprised that this season is making such a big deal not that it shouldn't be, but that they made a very big deal about Clem now having trauma or severe fear of dogs, considering what she went through back in season 2.
I mean, you gotta understand, in her case, like, I think this is what the game was going for, this direction. When you're traumatized, when you meet a dog in the post-apocalyptic world, you think you can trust it, but when it attacks you, you kind of like are traumatized, like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, where you're like, do I really trust dogs in this kind of world?
Well, it shattered the image of her head of what a loyal, lovable dog is, and that.
Yeah.
That scene in season 2 actually affected me with some mild PTSD when I was playing Fallout 4. Because in the Fallout series, you meet Dogmeat.
Yeah.
And so when I first meet Dogmeat, I knew that he was a recruitable companion, but there was part of me that was like, I don't know. I feel, I'm in a post-apocalyptic situation. This dog comes up to me. It acts all friendly, but should I trust it? I don't know. It might try to bite my arm off. Like if I open up some canned food or something. But
yeah.
those sugar bombs.
So
in general, after I saw, when I realized, and I'm pretty sure a few of you guys felt this, when I met Rosie after like she was obeying all the kids, I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I'm gonna be a little cautious with the dog, but I guess, okay, it's a friendly dog. It's not gonna rip my face off like usual.
She's very protective.
Yes.
And as she has to be. Also, in terms of like me, also in terms of talking to Violet, I just saw her as Jane 3.0.
Oh God.
Just this season's model
of
Jane. Just this season's model of Jane. So I was very cynical and just like, okay, let's just get through the cool girl independent thing that every one of these seasons needs to have, and we'll just move on.
What you forgot, and this is where like, I don't know if Lewis is still a likable character for you guys. It was just like he was at a normal light, then it just went downhill like a roller coaster for me. When he was like, okay, Violet, you're getting a B plus, whatever, B minus, and Clementine, you getting A plus. I was like, okay, I see you're
kissing
trying
up to us.
Yeah, I see you being a kiss ass and everything, and I don't like that. But I love the fact that you're just hitting on me. At least somebody is interested in Clementine.
At that point, I wouldn't even call that hitting on you just yet. It just seemed like he was wanting to make really good first impressions. He wants to be the likable person.
Oh, I feel like the moment he was making that song, "My Dear Clementine," I was like,
well, he just said that's the lyrics, and that was just the only other song he jokingly said because we were armed. But yes, we make it back to the academy, and Marlon surprises AJ. AJ reflexively does not like being surprised, apparently,
and hits a man where a man should never be hit.
I will say this I will just say this right off the bat. No matter what Marlon had done or went on later on this episode to do, he handled that situation a lot better than I would understand most other most people I know can't even walk off.
I was gonna say, do you know that? Are you speaking from experience?
I mean, freaking like nephews and like roughhousing and like it's you don't just that is not just an experience. That is an event that has to go through your mind of like.
Yeah, I feel awful because I do remember. When we were kids, it was completely an accident. Me and my brother, we were playing mini golf. I did something by accident, and boy, was my brother ticked off. Really ticked off. He did not.
That sounds better
so
than
bad.
That sounds worse than my experience, but I get what you're saying. Like, mine was this. It was just my little cousin, his name's Jeffrey, and I still call him to this day the demon child. Like that. He ran up to me. He sees me. We went to visit my aunt and everything with his family. He sees me, and he's like, I think at this time he's like 5 or 6. He sees me. Carson runs up to me, whack right into the groin, punches me.
That's just how he introduces himself to you. He just runs up and just punches you there.
Yeah, like just for that day. I'm like, whoo! Okay, grabbed him and threw him on the couch because I had to walk it off.
Okay, I'm glad you added that there's a couch. There was a couch involved in that situation.
Yeah, I was like, oh god, huh?
But it's like
I related to Marlon. I was like, oh.
So, but yeah, like it's that they're not mad at you on a personal level. It's just that event can just ruin your whole day.
Yeah.
And you can't go the whole day without.
Well, Karma came back because I think, and again, I believe this was an accident, but Karma came back because my brother and I were getting into the car, my finger, car door. Yeah. So I got it back. So
yeah, I believe in karma. So yeah. So we do that to Marlon and AJ. We get our second round of talking to people to try and get on good terms.
I mentioned this in my live stream, and I this is what I missed from season 1 that I didn't feel like they did enough in season 2 and 3. And actually in most Telltale games nowadays is that I really missed these quieter moments where you have a chance to walk around and actually sit down and talk to people.
I can control the pace a little bit.
Right, control the pace a little bit. That was one of my favorite parts of this episode was the pacing specifically. And I felt that it paid off very well because you get more invested in these characters and you get more invested in what's happening in the story because you kind of grow attached to them a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And if something happens to them, the stakes are a little bit higher now that you've actually had these quieter moments with them. So that's something I really liked a lot, that they should do more in the Telltale games.
Yeah.
I agree. Makes the characters more alive. The world feels more immersed.
Then we get to the point where and I thought this is, and I'm hoping I do watch your Twitch Let's Play on this, Hark, where you just work when you're trying to have parent-son talk. This is where parent Angela kicked in all right, it's time to have that talk right now, and let's see how this is gonna be. And I'm like, oh boy. Well, mine was just okay, come with me, my child.
So, and that was the point I was going to say real quick to Carson in defense of Ruby is I have a few friends in Tennessee.
Okay.
And they have told me that, and I that's why in my Let's Play I remarked about it was Ruby is like Southern hospitality kind of person, and these are my friend, hyper voice acting. You remember him from?
I know Hype. Yes. Yeah, I know Hype.
So
I love Hype.
Yeah, he's great. And his words not mine. Southern hospitality is, if you are on their bad side, they will not want anything to do with you. But if you are nice and if you're good with them, they will be the sweetest people in the world to you. So I could see that in Ruby, where she can be tested a lot, but when you're kind to her and when AJ owned up and apologized, she was suddenly very almost different person entirely.
Was that the first person you took AJ to? Hey, come here, let's go apologize. That's what I did. I was like, come with me.
I just kind of did a clock. I just kind of did a little clockwise thing. Yeah.
I felt like that was a very great storytelling device. It gave you a little bit more of a motivation to talk to the characters because you're trying to teach AJ and help AJ befriend these characters instead of let's just walk around and just talk to people randomly. No, there's actually a purpose to this because you want to help AJ, not be hated by all these people. Mm-hmm. So,
right, teaching those social skills.
Yeah, Mark, what did you do first? Did you go straight to because I saw when you start, you can go to the right or the left. Did you go to Mitch and Willie, or did you go to what most of us did? We went to Ruby first.
I think the first person you see is Ruby, so I went straight toward her.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems like it.
Yeah. Because I found this out later on YouTube from other videos. You can intentionally screw up those relationships if you choose to.
Oh, yeah, you could just pick the wrong ones and be very
or not talk to them at all.
Yeah, They are like, I'm telling you, they are the funniest reactions if you watch those videos. You'd be like, oh my god.
To jump, I guess, around the two most significant interactions that I'm actually really curious in case anyone did any differently was when you're talking to a sim, what would happen if you actually read that diary, that journal history book of his?
Yeah, I don't know.
It sounded like it was about to start going into further detail, and that's what I mentioned that as like it starts off saying, "Oh, new girl, she," and then he pulls it back, and I was thinking, if you read further, would you get to learn a bit more about what he thinks about Clementine by completing that sentence?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen anyone who's done that.
Did anyone hear?
No, I didn't do that because I wanted to respect him. Because I think it's more like he said he's more of a historian and he's doing it. And as a history graduate, I just couldn't like disrespect his love for what he was writing down.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Mark?
Same.
Okay, yeah, and same as well. But I'm very curious now. Like, if
I'm curious too.
Other interaction was the one with 10 and Vi.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
And that one was deep for me, on a personal level, because I get it. 10 is missing sisters, and they said, "Is this your graveyard?" And like, yeah, it is, but it's just of items that we remember them by. I'm like, oh, so if you never got their bodies back, like we couldn't, so we just buried.
Yeah.
We remember, but I was like, oh man, that's tough.
What if it was your moral, or what was your rationale for your choice on whether to stand there and pay respects with 10 or not?
I chose for AJ to pay respects as well, because it's like, look, this is this guy. He lost both of his sisters, and now I can understand if it was a friend. And in my Let's Play, you'll see that I did a little more comic relief action of that kind of thing. But I basically said that, look, this guy lost both of his sisters. Now, if it was a friend, it would have been a different story. But if it was like a family member, then yeah, show respect. Unless they say, no, we don't. I don't want you to show respect. I wish to do this because they are my family, and that makes rational sense to say, let him just have his family member. But if he needs like that support around him, that is the direction you should go, which is what I chose.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was pretty easy just because as a religious person myself, I tried to invoke that through my Clementine. So it felt natural for me to pay respects. Even if I wasn't a religious person or didn't believe in any of that, I'd like to believe that I would still be respectful of other people who are paying respects to their loved ones in that way. And I feel like I would have still done it. Regardless of what I did or didn't believe.
How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I paid respects especially because obviously everyone has lost someone in the apocalypse. Clementine especially lost many loved ones over the course of the season, so she was very empathetic. So, and that's something she wants to pass on to AJ. So I had her do that.
True.
I chose not to. Not because I didn't feel like 10 sisters needed, not to say that I didn't think they deserved being paid respect to. It was more that I didn't know if it was our place to suddenly, like, I just met 10 that day. I had no idea who his sisters were like. I didn't want to suddenly have us. I didn't know how involved they were going to be, but I didn't know if Clementine was going to just start, talking, trying to give some eulogy. I don't know what the builders were going to have me do there. So I was worried, would I be overstepping some line or becoming too familiar with someone by suddenly trying to insert myself in a situation, which was why I ended up backing out of that because I didn't want to.
Yeah, that makes total sense, and I that's where I was split on the fence with that too. So I get what you're saying on that, Lucky Jack.
So
that's a good point that you brought up earlier, Mark. Is trying to teach AJ about death and dealing with death, because I feel that AJ in particular, I don't think AJ has experienced a death that actually affects him personally. Because I feel like really the only person that he was particularly close to that would affect him in that way would be Clementine. I don't think they've befriended anyone that AJ would have had ties or attachment to that would force him to deal with death in this way. And I think his attitude towards death shows very well at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
But we'll touch on that when we get to it.
Yes.
So, good point, Mark. Let's get to the card game now.
Okay.
Mark, I want Mark to start with this one, though.
Yeah.
Mark, can you share us whatever thoughts you have about the card game that they were playing with Clementine?
Sure. I really enjoyed the card game, getting to know each other. Trying to remember all the questions. I know the first one was Violet. She asked what happened to AJ's parents, and of course, calling back to season 2, you can say they were great people. And of course, I was particularly fond of Alvin and Rebecca. I liked their characters, so I remembered them with respect and all that good stuff. And for the 2 Clementine questions, one was the ones that I did was Marlon's haircut, and also met anyone famous. And if you pick that, she actually mentions Javier. Like, I met a famous
That's
baseball
so cool.
player. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that was the first question I picked. It's like, oh, was he any good? It's like, oh, he was good with a bat.
Yeah,
But I was like,
they mention in-game questions a lot. If you
yeah,
which I can mention the list when you're ready to hear it.
I loved it because it was such a well done character development moment, and it was such a good way of like introducing these new characters by having a scene where they literally got to know each other.
the other one I picked was the what's the worst injury you've witnessed? To which they bring up a couple ones, and in particular, Clementine brings up the death of Carver. If you had her watch it.
Oh, that is cool.
She mentions how being smacked with a crowbar. Yeah,
because that wasn't in the story builder.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
Interesting.
Which I don't know. I don't know if they explained it on. But now that I think about it, I don't know if they assume you would have learned about it either way. But all I know is that it made sense for her because I had my Clementine witness the death of Carver, so she would have watched it happen.
I would hope that if you loaded a previous save, it would have taken that in consideration. I would hope.
I think,
even though it wasn't mentioned in the story builder.
You know, I'm just gonna go into like conspiracy theory here. Is let's say in the prologue they wanted you just to have the main idea of it, but what if like during the whole first episode it was still a story builder, because in the first part of it you're still trying to build your character and you're still trying to remember like for nostalgia reasons, and that's what the game developers planned. And I'm just rambling at this point.
It could be different choices. The one out of that game, the one significant choice that to me stood out, apart from the boyfriend one, because that then brings up Javier's nephew for Hark. The other
For me.
I know you're season 3 representing. So
yes.